What's up? What's happening? Welcome in to the Hoffman Show. We're on the team at 980 on a Friday. We got a whole bunch of stuff to talk about. NBA draft reaction continues. We will have our pal Zach Harper on the show at 4:30 to talk about that, as well as everything else going on in the NBA. Just an absolute stunner this morning in Toronto. Masai Ujiri out after 13 years at the helm of the Toronto Raptors. We'll get Zach's reaction to that and more. We also have, for Not My Beat today, a trip to the WNBA. Kareem Copeland wrote about every WNBA fan's favorite thing, officiating. So we'll talk to Kareem coming up at 5 p.m. You'll hear from Logan a little bit later, Take Command style on a Friday. But we start with letting you hear a little bit more about the Wizards' latest, shiniest toy. I guess technically not the latest. They, of course, took a player last night in the second round, and they took Will Riley after they took Trey Johnson in the first round. But this morning, Will Dawkins joined the Junkies and had some things to say about Trey Johnson. And Chad Myers, who coached Trey Johnson in high school in Missouri, joined Linnell on Overtime last night. So we have some things to play for you from that front. Starting with, very simply, let's hear from Will Dawkins on why the Wizards liked Trey Johnson, who they took number 6 overall in the 2025 NBA draft.
Yes, he was one of our top targets for a lot of reasons. Obviously, he's a really good player in terms of being able to move the scoreboard and shoot. But he's got the right work ethic and mentality. So once we got him in our building and got a feel for him, he was someone that was top 5 on our board all season long. And when you fell to 6, you felt pretty good when you find someone that you have ranked so high.
It's really interesting to hear a lot of the scuttlebutt coming out of this draft where, Ace Bailey, who we're going to talk about later, because I think the Ace Bailey situation is a lot more complicated than a lot of people are making it. Everyone just wants to crush Ace Bailey because he's super mad that Utah picked him, and I don't think it's that simple. And like NBA teams are saying this and agents are saying that. Like I think it's a fascinating big picture conversation, and we're going to have it at 6:00. But a lot of the reporting, Tim Bontemps, our pal from ESPN, was amongst those who was reporting on the fact that a lot of people think the Wizards were the team that had Ace Bailey or made a promise to Ace Bailey at 6, and then Utah takes him at 5, and then the Wizards are like, okay, fine, we'll take Trey Johnson. If he was a top 5 player on their board all the way, though, that means one of the guys who got taken in the top 5 was not a top 5 player on their board all year, or not a top 5 player on their board. And I think a lot of people probably assume that that's Con Knippel, who was a late riser in this draft. And I could see Washington definitely wanting Con Knippel. The Ace Bailey thing, with the way he approached this process and the things that he said are important to him, just never really makes sense to me in terms of the Wizards. Now, there's also a report from Kristen Peak, who used to be with Yahoo and is an independent draft analyst now, who's doing her own thing on the media side and is excellent, that Bailey had a secret workout with the Wizards. So maybe they did have a keen interest in Ace Bailey. But Trey Johnson, certainly someone they were high on. And I think very early in the process, he's the guy that I circled of the guys that I thought might be available in that range that I thought best fit Washington and what they want to do. Will also on the Junkies this morning, again, Will Dawkins joining the program, had a really great anecdote on Trey Johnson being a student of the game, which is something they obviously care about quite a bit in terms of the guys that they are bringing in.
He's a pure hooper. He's like a lot of teenagers, likes to hang out and play video games and things of that nature, but he's singularly focused on basketball. We had him over for dinner and we're talking to him, and it's me, Coach Keefe, I think Amber Nichols. We're talking about a play that happened in one of the Mystics games. It was a DHO where the player went under the screen and then came back around to isolate on the other side. And we were saying it out loud, and he said, yeah, I've seen that a couple times in some other WNBA games. They're starting to do that. And that's when you realize that this dude, he gets it. He really loves basketball. He watches it and studies it. And that was kind of one of those things where okay, the IQ is there, but the passion to get better and watch all types of basketball, like he's a true hooper.
That doesn't surprise me based off what I know about this kid and what, he said, right? And, kids are kids. But in the NBA's case, like we're talking about legit kids. These kids are 18, 19 years old, most of them in this draft. Obviously, some a little bit older, but the top players are coming out after 1 year, or the international guys coming over as soon as they're eligible at 18, and that is what it is. But or at 19, but that is what it is. But he said on draft or at the draft combine, like, I have no other hobbies. I watch basketball. I play basketball. Like, basketball is my hobby. And there's a ton of dudes in the league like that. Like LeBron James watches a ton of hoop. I'm trying to think of some of the other guys who just live, breathe, eat, sleep basketball. And it helps make you a great, like there is a portion of greatness that comes with the necessity for obsession. And obviously well-rounded people can also succeed in a variety of fields, and being well-rounded as a human is a good thing. And I hope as Trey Johnson gets older and he has all the opportunities that come with being a professional athlete in the world's most powerful city, that his world expands a little bit and he's able to get out and maybe falls in love with the food scene, or maybe he enjoys some art, or maybe he, takes a liking to insert any hobby that anyone has here. But a guy that is paying attention at that level and is not just like casually watching the game, but is watching the game through that lens, I think is a great thing. And I will also say that particular action, I'm a gigantic nerd. That particular reverse DHO action where players are starting to come off screens and go back around the other way. I think you're going to see a ton of it in the NBA next year. It has started to populate a lot in the WNBA. It's a way to avoid like a player. It's basically a rescreen before you get the ball. Like the concept of a rescreen is I'm going to go right off a screen, and then you're going to go under it, and then we're just going to flip the screen at the last second, and now you're pinned in a really bad spot. And it's just taking that before the player who's getting screened for has the ball, so it's a dribble handoff. And I want to say Caitlin Clark was the one who started to do that, I think, with Aaliyah Boston. And more teams are certainly going to do that because, as these shooters get more lethal and lethal, like you got to find ways to get them open. And the fact that Trey Johnson's like, how about this trick? I love that. That's a great anecdote. One more from Will Dawkins, and then we'll take a quick break, come back and let you hear from Chad Myers, his high school coach. Trey Johnson's high school coach. Will Dawkins, though, talking about how it's funny that the Junkies asked him about this because he didn't want to talk about this at the press conference on draft night about showing tape to Trey Johnson, and Trey Johnson, having that conversation with him. And he's like, man, I got to tell Trey, we don't tell our secrets. We don't want people knowing that we do that. But he was willing to talk about it with the Junkies. So what was the reaction to Trey watching his own film with Will and with Brian Keefe?
I told him he's got to stop sharing house secrets like that. But when guys come in, we try to make sure that they know exactly who we are so we can learn who they are. And with that, we go through and they spend time with everybody in the organization, from our player pathways and enrichment teams all the way to our analytic teams. And they do film sessions with the coaches, but also spend some time with myself and Travis and Amber in the front office, and we watch film with them. And it's like, hey, this is what we've seen. This is what we like. These are the real question marks we have. Sometimes you can't tell whose fault it is, what the assignments, what's being asked. So we just got to figure it out. And it's really just learning how they are willing to take accountability, how much humility they have, and how much they're willing to push and work on those things. And I'd say we've had similar conversations with a lot of our players, and the way he was able to show us how he learned and show us the things he saw. And I think it motivated him the next day to kind of fight in some of those areas. And I like how he accepted the challenge. I would say that.
Will Dawkins on the Junkies this morning. For the full interview, just search the Sports Junkies wherever you get your podcasts. And when we get back, that was something that Trey Johnson also discussed with his former high school coach, Chad Myers. Chad joined Linnell last night on Overtime. You'll hear that side of the conversation, plus why Myers says Johnson is the exact kind of guy that he always looks for. Next on the Hoffman Show on the Team 980, and always live as well on the free Odyssey app. My guy Zach Harper joins us, the Athletic NBA writer. Their newsletter, The Bounce, is awesome. You should check that out. Subscribe. Get great NBA coverage to your inbox every morning. Or just keep listening because Zach is going to join us at 4:30. Last night on Overtime on 106.7 The Fan, Linnell Willingham had Chad Myers, who is the head coach for the high school that Trey Johnson attended before going to the University of Texas, and now, of course, the 6th overall pick in the 2025 NBA draft to your Washington Wizards. And a couple of interesting bites from Coach Myers. And first and foremost, this one about who Trey is as a person, which I feel like a lot of coaches say this stuff, but the wording here is fairly specific. Chad Myers on his former player, Trey Johnson, and why he's always looking for kids like Trey Johnson.
What we're really trying to find is not only elite players, but guys that love to be in a gym and they're coming to Branson and try to make themselves college ready and eventually always have a chance to play in the NBA. And everything you've heard about Trey kind of hits that. Like, he loves basketball. He's a basketball junkie, and he made the most out of the year at our place, and he obviously helped keep us one of the best teams in the country.
This Chad Myers, the coach at Link Academy in Missouri. So, Montverde, all these prep programs that you've probably heard of. This is just another one. And Trey's team was very, very good for the year that he was there. And so when you talk about, we're looking for kids like that, it's not because he grew up in his backyard and he's coaching at a public school. These are kids that are recruited at the high school level for high school championship competition purposes. And they go there to get ready to go be college ready. And then, obviously, they go to college and they're hoping that the coaches that are there can get them to the pros. And, speaking of coaches, we had Brad Underwood on yesterday who told us about Will Riley, the other first-round pick for the Washington Wizards last night, or Wednesday night, when they traded number 18 back and got to 21 and took Riley. And very similar type of thing, just like A-plus kid who works so hard. And Chad Myers went even further and compared Trey Johnson's work ethic to some of the hardest workers, some of the for the love of the game hoopers that we've seen in recent NBA history.
Yeah, I think he has some of the Kobe stuff in him. I mean, he's super competitive. His just mentality to work is at a different level. We have a unique situation. We practice every morning 10 to 12, and then we actually come back and do team skill work 6:30 to 8. And I don't think there was one day during that time that he wasn't in the gym before weights and breakfast at 6 a.m. getting in another workout. And then half the time he would be coming back at 10 and staying in the gym and getting up shots. And I think that's why he had so much success at Texas. I think he took advantage of being there in summer school, and then they've kind of said the exact same thing. And obviously those are high expectations going to D.C. talking about Kevin Durant, but it kind of fits the bill, and that's who he's modeled himself after, Kobe and his work ethics.
The Kobe work ethic thing is always kind of funny. I mean, there's great stories from the 2008 Olympics where I think it's Carmelo who was telling the story, and a bunch of the dudes went out one night. They're in Rio, or 2008. No, where that would have been in Beijing. This is the 2012 team, so they're in London, or was it 08? No, it was 08. It was 08. So the Redeem team, right? And it's D Wade and Carmelo, and those guys go out, and they're out super late, and they're getting back at 4 in the morning. And I think actually it might have been before they even left, and they're in Las Vegas for USA basketball camp, right? So they haven't even technically made the team yet, or they've made the team, but they're about to go. Point is, they're out crazy late. And it's 5 a.m., 4 a.m., something like that, and they get in an elevator. And they're getting back. Kobe's gets in the elevator to go down to the gym to work out because that's how he got down. And starting that day, a lot of those dudes started changing their schedules. And they might go out at night, but they were going to be back enough to get some sleep, and they were going to be up working out with Kobe the next day. And that's why on that 08 team, a lot of those guys' careers took the next step after it. It wasn't just the Olympic experience. It was being around the veterans on that team that were already or had already solidified their Hall of Fame bona fides, and specifically Bryant, who just worked at a different level. Durant's an interesting guy, too, from a work ethic standpoint, because he's never been a super weight room guy. But he's a guy that just loves to play basketball and just lives on the court and is always getting up shots. He just loves to play basketball. He loves to hoop. And so he gets it done in a different way. And the capacity to work is a skill. Like, work capacity is something you can work on. There is part of that is physical. There's also part of that is mental. And to know that Trey Johnson has that for an organization that requires a lot from its players. That's something that I've been around longer in this business, and also around this team and around these guys that are in charge over there. Like, they definitely ask/require, depending on what time of the year it is. Like, once they're there. But like, even in this part of the calendar, like, a lot of NBA guys are in LA or doing their own thing wherever. They have a ton of guys in the gym that just are like, I want to stay here. I want to work with my people. Like, I want to be in this environment, and they're around. And they're around because they're constantly at Mystics games. They're posting videos from the facility on Instagram, etc. And like, that's good. Like, hey, after the season, get away for a little bit, unplug, reset, refresh your body, but eventually get back in there and get to work, because, even, you could say like, oh, shouldn't they take more time off? It's like, you want to be playing this time of year. The finals wrapped last weekend on Sunday. If you want to be in condition to play in the playoffs one day, like, get used to playing the extra or working for the extra month and a half. So, I think some of these young guys really take that kind of stuff to heart, and Trey Johnson's going to fit right in from that. Who is Trey Johnson off the floor? What's his family like? Linnell asked Chad Myers, his coach at Lincoln High School or Lincoln Academy in Missouri, about that, and this was Chad Myers' answer.
Yeah, I think kind of what his dad said last night, right? Like, his dream was to play in the NBA, and Richard was always around. And that's really was Trey's circle, him and his mom, but his dad is always around. I think his dad having experience being a good player at Baylor, I'm sure he shared a lot with Trey, like, what he did great, what he needed, to do better. And I think Trey is very aware and listens a lot, but that's just kind of how he is. He's really in the gym. It's unique, even like people on our staff, like, that have like younger siblings, and younger kids, like, Trey gets on and plays Xbox against kids from Lincoln stuff still to this day. And it's just kind of, he's very tight knit, and just very simple, in the gym, working on his game, playing Xbox, and, which is exciting to anybody that can draft a guy like that, because, he's really serious about basketball. And obviously that's a huge piece of being successful at that level.
It's your job. And, even people that want to do this job, right? And like, this job is different than that job, but it's a job that people look at and go, man, that's got to be fun. Like, yeah, it is fun. Like, this job, talking about sports, like, today was a stressful day. I'm not going to pretend like it wasn't. It is June 27th. There ain't a lot going on. Trying to, like, I'm constantly refreshing ESPN.com and The Athletic and, Washington Post, and, like, just trying to find, is there an interesting article that I could talk about? Is there an interesting article that I could get the author on? Is there, like, what the hell are we going to talk about today? It's not work, but, like, at the end of the day, if I show up at 4 o'clock, it's like, okay, now talk. Blah, 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 blah. It's not laying concrete. It's not, I'm not saving lives. I'm not doing all this. And in the NBA, it's the same thing, right? Like, at the end of the day, your job is to play basketball. But your job is to play basketball at the highest level that it's played on earth. And if you don't do that, then your career is going to be really, really short. It is a job. And by the way, it is unlike this job. And, it may pay very differently, and it's very different in a lot of ways from laying concrete. But, like, the physical toll on the body of an NBA player is no joke. And the maintenance and the lifestyle that you have to live to be able to play 65, nevertheless 75, nevertheless, like Bub Carrington did last year, 82 games, is very real. And for a kid to have that understanding coming in, and to want that coming in, where he's not going to have to learn things the hard way, hopefully, fingers crossed, I think is a huge advantage. Last but not least, the mentality piece of this, and this is where we ended the first segment of the show as well. Will Dawkins talking about the film session that he had with Trey Johnson. Chad Myers talked about that with Linnell last night on Overtime as well.
No, I mean, I think he wants that. Like, the only way you can get better is through, like, learning. And obviously people that tell you the truth for all of us. I mean, in my profession, your profession,
For sure.
we need
For
truth
sure.
tellers around us.
Right.
And it's funny. I know he won't be working with directly, but Cody Toppert and me worked together. That's the G League coach there. And I told him, I said, you'll love Trey just because, like, he wants to get better. And like, I just know how, everybody on the staff there, and I know Cody's tremendous with, breaking down film with those guys and showing them things. And he's the kind of kid that eats that up. Like, you're like, hey, I saw this on film. Like, he'll be knocking on your door. Can you show me what you saw? And,
Right.
And then, hey, I made that mistake on offense. I didn't make this read. And even as simple, like when he was playing in the McDonald's game, we were, a lot of people didn't realize how good of a passer he was.
Yes.
Just because anytime you get labeled as a scorer, people don't think you can make reads and make passes. And he made a play in the McDonald's game, and I texted him, like, that night he had responded, like, Coach, you saw that hook pass we've been working on. That, like, that was what he was thinking about, like what he had been working on, how he implemented that, even the McDonald's game, which is an all-star game. So
Right.
I think he wants that. I think he wants guys that are going to push him. I think he wants teammates that are going to push him. And honestly, he's better in that environment. He probably struggles more with guys that aren't motivated to work. He wants more people that are motivated and try to get to the same cause he is. So
Either all these people around him are frauds, or the Wiz got a good one in Trey Johnson. And by the way, talk about, okay, that sounds great, but like, what's he done? He led the SEC in scoring as a freshman in what was considered one of the best conferences in a long time in college basketball. That it was definitely the best conference this past year. The SEC was loaded with, Oklahoma and Texas now joining, Florida, who was the eventual national champion, and, Arkansas with Cal. Kentucky still got dudes. Like, South Carolina had a top 10 pick in Colin Murray Boyles. Like, it was a loaded SEC. And the guy who scored more points than anybody else last year is now the newest Washington Wizard. So tells you something about the results he's able to get as well. When we get back, Zach Harper on what he thinks of the draft picks for the Wizards, the Ace Bailey situation, and the shocker of the day in the NBA, Masai Ujiri out in Toronto. Zach Harper from The Athletic joins us next. It's Hoffman Show. We're on the Team 980, always live as well on the free Odyssey app, streaming live on YouTube too at the Team 980. Our pleasure to welcome back to the show an NBA writer for The Athletic and author of The Athletic's daily NBA newsletter, The Bounce. Busy time of year for Zach Harper between the finals that concluded somehow 7 weeks ago Sunday, as in like it feels like it's 7 weeks ago, but it was actually Sunday. And then, of course, free agency starting with the draft in between. But Zach with us now. Welcome back to the show, dude. How are you?
It never ends.
It never ends.
Absolutely will never end. Yeah.
Although, like, you know, July 17th or so, I guess that's Vegas summer. Let's see. But like the 25th, we might have a week. And then some dumb pre-training camp trade will happen. And that's, you know, there it goes.
Yeah, I feel like Giannis is going to, like, not demand a trade, but he'll like hint at something on Twitter, and then we're gonna lose our minds.
But that's silly season, and that one's on us. Like sometimes it's okay to just relax, right, Zach? Right?
Oh, for sure. I mean, I'm all for it. I don't think we need to participate in it, but that's not how the industry works.
No, we need them clicks. Obviously, that's how the industry works now, which is a great model that's not hurting anybody. Okay, before I get us all fired for discrediting what the validity of our jobs. Let's start with the news of the day. We'll get to some Wizards draft stuff. I want to talk with you about the Ace Bailey situation because I feel like that's an interesting conversation to be had. But I looked at my phone this morning. It goes off. Oh, let's see what this The Athletic alert is. Wait, Masai's out in Toronto? What was your reaction to Masai Ujiri, who's widely thought of as one of the best and most important executives in the NBA, parting ways with the Toronto Raptors after 13 years?
Yeah, he was one of the best. I mean, he hasn't been
fair
there
enough.
In a while, but yeah, he was. I mean, he didn't get a great return on the Siakam deal. You know, like it's fine. Like he had a pretty okay return on the OG trade, but not great. Like I mean, I think after the title, he went into this weird, like, everyone's going to be 6'9" on our team, and we don't need big men, except you do need a big man. And eventually he got Jakob Poeltl back. But, yeah, like, Masai should still be one of the best. Like, I think a lot of people saw this coming when it seemed like they weren't going to work out a contract extension. I don't know that I saw him leaving now, but I didn't expect him to make it, past next year. It seemed like they were going to part ways regardless. Him running the draft is a little weird. If you were going to do this, like that part is confusing. Like we've seen some stuff like that before with teams, but if you're gonna fire him, then or part ways with him, then part ways. Like don't have someone in there with plenty of time to run the draft.
Right. To have a different lead executive, and maybe they kept it quiet and he didn't actually run the draft. I guess that's a possibility, unless it's been reported otherwise that he was really running things yesterday or the last 2 days. But considering the short time between, to have a different chief executive for the draft and free agency in the NBA feels unprecedented, to say the least. But then again, the Knicks just had a draft without a coach, so everyone's doing great in the East, Zach.
Yeah, no, I mean, look, the East is wide open, so why not go into it haphazardly if you're gonna do it? That's how you should approach it.
Obviously. All right, the Wizards. I think a lot of people like what they did. Obviously, they're still a couple years away from competing in the East. Who knows what the East will look like by then? But they get Trey Johnson. They also get Will Riley at 21. How do you think Will Dawkins and company did for the Wizards the other night in the draft?
Oh, I thought they did great. I mean, I think them ending up with Ace Bailey or Trey Johnson was the goal. They didn't. It sounds like, from what I heard, they didn't really want to give up future picks in order to move up, which I totally understand. In order to go get Ace Bailey, above the Utah Jazz at 5, and so if you're not going to move up to 4 to go get him, and you feel Trey Johnson is right there in terms of a prospect, then that's a great play. I think Trey Johnson's going to fit in perfectly with that group. This kid can shoot. Like his footwork is amazing. His shot is great. He's a bona fide scorer. I'm not going to outright dismiss him defensively because I don't know that Texas team, was really all that great in terms of what they set him up to be defensively. And obviously we're not going to see that in the next couple of years with what the Wizards are going to be. We'll see it a few years from now, but I think Trey Johnson is a phenomenal prospect. He was one of my favorite guys in the draft. I love the young group that they've got together. I'm also a big Will Riley guy. Like, I think, he's got to put on some weight. He's got to get a lot stronger, but he's someone that I think the shot will be there. I think he's a guy that just goes out and makes plays. I think he's a tenacious guy on both ends of the floor. And I think ending up with those two, with the way that they kind of were wheeling and dealing for Will Riley with the second pick in the first round, I think that's just a great draft for them to have.
Yeah, the way they've already, transformed, let's say, Bilal's body in 2 years, I have a lot of faith in their ability to do that to Will Riley as well. It's like, hey, man, here's the weight room, here's the protein. Please, we'll see you in a year. On the Bailey Johnson thing, I'm trying not to get my own bias into this because I liked Johnson a lot, but I also listened to Will Dawkins talk about what they look for and why he likes Riley, why he likes Johnson, the competitiveness and the kind of the makeup element, the human personal characteristics. And I know everyone's reporting that Ace Bailey to Washington was a thing, and that's where Bailey wanted to go, that maybe there was even a secret workout at one point, that certainly there's a lot of smoke there. But is Ace Bailey the kind of competitor that a team that is prioritizing that, Wizards or otherwise, is looking for? I mean, I would guess if Danny Ainge took him, Danny Ainge wants psycho competitors. So is Bailey misunderstood in that way, or is it just purely that his talent is so great that people are willing to look past things that they maybe wouldn't for other prospects?
I think Ace Bailey's taking a lot of heat for what Omar Cooper's doing. He trusts an adult who has been leading him since he joined his AAU team, right? Omar Cooper, for people who don't know, Omar Cooper is Sharif Cooper. You may remember that name from Instagram reels and YouTube highlights, and Sharif Cooper was briefly in the NBA. Omar Cooper is his father. Omar Cooper has an AAU team. At one point, Ace Bailey played for it, and he's been kind of guiding Ace through this process. And he's not his agent. He's just representing him and helping him because he's not a certified agent. But Omar Cooper has been kind of running this whole process for him. And he's an 18, 19-year-old kid who just okay, yeah, I trust you. And he's taking a lot of heat for this. So everyone's oh, Ace Bailey's doing this, and Ace Bailey's doing that. No, he's trust this adult to do things for him. And I don't know why we're hammering Ace Bailey for all of this stuff, right? I'm hammering Omar Cooper for this stuff. I think Omar Cooper's making bad decisions. I don't hammer Ace Bailey for this. I think Ace Bailey is a phenomenal prospect. I think he's crazy talented. I think that he and Dylan Harper had zero help at Rutgers, right? They have been better. Absolutely. That team should have been better. They also spent all their NIL money on two guys, right? There was no talent outside of them on that team. So I think the Ace Bailey stuff is overblown. And I think he's taking a lot of heat for something an adult guiding him is deciding right now. And I think he's going to be an incredible pro. I think him ending up in Utah was really good for his development. I don't buy any of the stuff that he's going to hold down and he's not going to report or any of this stuff. I don't buy that because I just who's the last player to do that? Steve Francis was the last player, be no, I'm not playing here. Get me out of there. I don't buy any of this Ace Bailey discussion right now. I think it's all so overblown.
So following up on that, I'm going to ask this question neutrally, or as neutrally as I can, understanding what you just said and not trying to push back against it. But so even the stuff where Bailey is I want to go somewhere where I can get shots. You look at that as Cooper is telling him what to say. He's saying it. And the negative reflection of that is actually a reflection on Cooper and not Bailey.
No, he wants a young player wants to go out there and get shots and score. Of course, that's basketball. He's a scorer. He's a guy that wants to go out there and lead a team and go out there and score and shoot. That's basketball. I don't look at that as any kind of negative thing. He's not saying I never want to play defense. I never want to do this. He wants to go out there and be the guy early. I don't look at that as a problem at all. I think that people have decided that Ace Bailey is going to be the problem child in this draft class. And so anything that happens now, we're just going to paint it negatively. He may end up being that. I don't know. But I just think it's weird that it's being shaded this way at this point.
What stock do you put into, Zach Harper from The Athletic is with us here on the Hoffman Show. What stock do you put in, if any, vets like Draymond Green and Paul George on their podcast? Because that's a thing we have now. criticizing him in the way that he's handling this?
I don't think he's handling it this way. I think I think Omar Cooper is. Like, I think he's trusting an adult to like handle this situation. I don't expect 19-year-olds to know how to handle the business. I don't. Like, even in the NIL like era, you know, like, didn't Evan Mobley not work out for the Cavs and they took him?
Yeah.
Like, I mean, okay, were we killing Evan Mobley over this? Ricky Rubio didn't want to go to Minnesota. That worked out. You know, like, I don't think his camp and like has handled this well, but also like there are so many times where players will not work out for a team and then the team takes them anyway. For some reason, we have zeroed in on this is the problem time. And again, it might end up being a bad situation. I just don't know why this one is different.
Yeah, and my hypothesis, for whatever it would be worth, is a lot of this is probably also agent-driven. You have a lot of reporters who talk to the same agents, and now you have someone that's coming in from the outside and doing it differently and is not part of the club, and that sometimes rubs a lot of people the wrong way. And even if someone who was in the club were to do the exact same thing.
Right. You know, and I'm with you on that, right? Like, we don't like when someone like disrupts the system, and they have openly disrupted the system, right? And it might end up being detrimental for him. I do know that like Austin Ainge deciding like, no, that's my guy, because everything I heard leading up to the draft was like, he's not really an Austin Ainge type of player. And then the fact that he took him, they're like, yeah, we're not trading him. This is the guy. Austin Ainge knows his stuff. Yeah. Austin Ainge is a really good talent evaluator. He was a big part of a lot of that talent evaluation for the Boston Celtics over the last, decade, I guess, or however long he was in that role, helping out that organization. And so, the fact that he ended up taking him, look, I'm not saying, Austin Ainge is going to be perfect at this, but that kind of opened my eyes a little bit of, wow, this is clearly someone that this guy recognizes of like, no, we need this guy.
Zach Harper, NBA writer for The Athletic, with us here on the Hoffman Show. And then there's the larger conversation, Zach, where we flip this whole thing on its head and say, why doesn't every kid do this? Do you think we ever reach a point where the draft comes under serious scrutiny? The National Women's Soccer League abolished their draft recently, so there is an American sport that now with has like big time, not NBA size, but like fairly big time coverage. They're on a lot of the networks and they're making money in the whole deal. They've done away with the draft. That also exists within a context where their sport globally is competing for talent in a very different way. We know the draft has become this event. NFL draft, same thing, but in an era where NIL is real and players have more money coming in and the contracts are significantly bigger now once they get there. Do you think we ever get to a point where we just abolish the draft and we have a different way of letting players select their first team as opposed to essentially assigning them somewhere for their first job?
I mean, Adam Silver has discussed before how interested he seems in the idea of like the European soccer or an international soccer model, right? Of like clubs, and I guess basketball too. Like, they've got basketball clubs where players sign at 13, 14 years old. Luka Doncic was signed at 13 years old and put in that like system for, I think it was Real Madrid, right?
He was a Real Madrid kid.
Yeah. And so I think Adam Silver is intrigued by that. Also, the NBA won't do away with conferences in the playoffs because they like the tradition. So, I don't know. That's such a major shakeup. They do like the pomp and circumstance of the draft. It is, a business TV show for them on some level. I don't know how much money they make off that, in terms of television revenue and everything, but it is a show, right? And they do like putting on TV shows. And so I don't think ultimately they would, but I wouldn't outright just say like, no, that will never happen, because I do think there is something to the idea of homegrown talent and investing into that, because I think ultimately the NBA does like the idea of the control of how players are developed, the control of where that talent comes from, the control of maybe not letting, the idea of AAU basketball infecting the development of some of these children.
Zach Harper with us from The Athletic. So back to the here and now, Zach. the New Orleans Pelicans, I feel like, escaped criticism earlier in the week on the Jordan Poole trade. We obviously talked about it here through the Wizards lens, and I was like, man, I think the Wizards did well. They did the contractual side of it, but like CJ McCollum to Jordan Poole, if Poole is not a part of your long-term future, like, and it's really about next year, then like you can make an argument McCollum's even a better fit for what they have going on here. And also, like, on the New Orleans side, why do they want Jordan Poole? And then they back it up with drafting Jeremiah Fears, and then the move that they did not escape any amount of criticism for, which is moving up 10 spots for Derek Queen by giving up an unprotected first-round pick next year. Do I bother asking you what the New Orleans Pelicans are doing, or do you not have any idea either?
Well, I would say tanking, but they just gave up their pick, so that doesn't make any sense, right? Like, I don't know, man. Like, I like the Fears pick. I think he's going to be really good. I don't buy the bad shooting percentage from three at Oklahoma. I think he was forced into taking a lot of bad shots. He's a good free throw shooter. That usually leads to guys figuring out how to shoot at the NBA level. So he's a great pick and roll player. I think he's going to be a really good NBA point guard. So I love that pick for them. Also, DeJounte Murray's coming back from an Achilles injury, so who even knows if he's going to play much next season. So I love that pick for them. The Jordan Poole trade, man, anytime you can add an extra year of money for a worse player, you got to do it at the same position. I think I think that's Troy Weaver coming from there and being like, hey, I like Jordan. Let's add him to the mix. CJ's expiring anyway. I don't know. That move was weird. And I didn't really understand that. I thought it was a great move by the Wizards to clear even more money in the process and bring in another great veteran. They've got so many good veterans in that locker room now to be around those young guys and all that flexibility moving forward to acquire bad contracts and more draft assets with it. That trade, I think Derek Queen's going to be a nice, solid pro. Maybe even makes a couple All-Star games, but you're going to give up a pick that could be the number one pick. Like it doesn't take a whole lot of mental gymnastics to think that that's the number one pick next year, which ends up being AJ DeBanza, who's like a guy teams will absolutely tank for. Like probably, as tantalizing as like a Cooper Flag. Like this kid's going to be amazing. And so you're giving up that possibility for a guy who also plays the same position as your alleged franchise player. I mean, as soon as that trade went through, all these people that I know, we all start talking. We're like, do they have a Zion deal on deck? Like, this doesn't make any sense. And if that ends up being the Milwaukee pick, that's better. That Milwaukee pick, that they're a Giannis either trade demand or hamstring pull away from that being a great pick
right
next year. So because it's the more favorable of the two. Like, I don't know, all the whispers from behind were like, oh, Troy Weaver, Joe Dumars had Troy Weaver like run that whole thing this week. I'm like, that seems either like he's like foisting all that stuff onto Troy Weaver, or like they just don't know what they're doing right now. But that is, I mean, I've never had less confidence in a franchise.
Yeah, it's pretty wild. Because even like, hey, we think we're going to be good. It's like, okay, well then take the Milwaukee pick. Like that's helpful. And I like the Fears pick too. I like Fears a lot. I was like, this kid's awesome. He's explosive. He's bouncy. He plays so freaking fast, which I thought put him on the board potentially here. Obviously they go Johnson, thrilled with that pick, but it's him and Poole, and knowing Murray's in the hopper eventually, and you just traded for him a year ago. It's like, I like Queen. I can see where Derek Queen is like an Al Jefferson type that makes a couple of All-Star teams and is a really useful player. But he plays the same position as Zion, and it's just here would be my question, Zach. If we're gonna stop being cynical media members for a second. Is there a chance that this goes well for New Orleans? Like, is there a chance we look back and you go, you want to know what? Like, obviously, take the Milwaukee part out of it. Or even don't. Say Giannis is healthy the whole year. And is there a way that in this Western Conference, as loaded as it is, they finally get a healthy Zion year, some other things go right, and this pick is in the 20s? Or do you just not see a path for that to be the case?
Yeah, like, if Zion's healthy, I believe they'll be in the, like, in the playoffs. Like, I don't know, 6, 7, 8. That's not a top 4 or 5 team in the West, right? So, like, maybe that's somewhere in, like, the 18 to 21 range. I think, like, best case scenario, which, okay, like, fine, but I still don't understand. It's not about, like, all right, what's the best case scenario for that to end up being? It's the process. You gave that up unprotected. That's the issue. It's not like that should at least be top 10 protected. It should really be lottery protected, but it's unprotected. It's the process of it all. Like, you didn't think about that in the slightest.
Right. Atlanta was like, how about a pick? And they're like, how about next year?
Yeah.
That's it.
Like
done.
Atlanta went to them and said, okay, we want next year's pick. And they said, okay.
Right.
Deal.
Right. It's not great down there in New Orleans. And that, of course, is if Zion's healthy, a thing that has never happened. It is worth pointing out, Zion, when healthy, has been not only a really good player, but a good player that has driven a lot of winning. Like, his winning percentage is actually pretty good. It's just the GP column. Games played, not enough. And thus, New Orleans hasn't done a lot of winning since they drafted Williamson. Was that 2019? Zach Harper writing about all of it at The Athletic, including the newsletter, The Bounce. Get it sent to your inbox each and every day with the latest going on in the NBA. A must-read, really year-round for NBA fans, but especially this time of year. You want to keep up with all the free agency news when that opens in a couple days. You definitely want to make sure you subscribe to The Bounce. Zach, always great to chat, my friend. I'm sure we will again soon. Thanks for some time on a Friday, and have a great weekend.
Yes, sir. Anytime.
Zach Harper with us here on the Hoffman Show. Okay, when we get back, talk about frustrating things in the basketball world. WNBA officiating stinks. It has for a long time, but it is finally getting a lot more attention, including a well-reported piece in the Washington Post that included talking to players, coaches, league executives, including the commissioner, Kathy Engelbert, and even some officials anonymously. That reporting was done by Kareem Copeland, my pal. Kareem joins us next here on the Team 980. It's the Hoffman Show, hour number 2 here on the Team 980, always live as well on the free Odyssey app. And actually, Metal Chris, who's in today for Anthony. Anthony, I can happily report, by the way, Anthony has made it safe to Paris. He is on the ground. He has also changed his name. He's been there for like 30 minutes, and he's changed his name to Antoine. So we'll check in with Haney when he gets back and see what his name is. But anyway, Metal Chris, are you prepared to hit the Not My Beat stinger? And if not, we'll just go straight to Kareem. It's not a big deal because I forgot to remind you. Tell you what.
Yeah, sorry.
It's all good. That's my fault. I own that. So Kareem Copeland, Washington Post, I'm sorry you don't get the fancy introduction, but your piece was awesome, and I'm excited to talk to you about it.
I appreciate you having me.
All good, man. All good. All right. So you wrote a piece on WNBA officiating, which for those of us that have been watching the WNBA for a long time, is something that has needed more attention for a long time. It is now getting a lot of attention. How is the league reacting to the increased scrutiny of what has been inconsistent at best, or maybe at worst, as you wrote about officiating in its games?
It's actually kind of funny. They acknowledge that, hey, we're not perfect. And they talked a lot about, hey, we've got young refs coming in. They're coming through this pipeline that, hey, before they even hit a WNBA floor, there's 6 to 10 years in our pipeline and all these things. But it's funny you use the word consistency, and that seems to be the biggest divide between the two groups when you're talking about players and coaches and the league. The league thinks the consistency word is a bit of a cop-out, or at minimum misunderstood. I was talking to Monty McCutcheon, who's kind of in head of officiating. He's developed development and training for all of the NBA leagues, which we're talking G League, we're talking WNBA, we're talking about NBA. And he was saying, listen, there's a difference between consistency and fair. And a lot of coaches get upset when so-and-so, there's a free throw discrepancy. They've shot 20 free throws. We've only shot 5. Things aren't consistent. He says that, listen, that's a fair issue, not a consistency issue. The consistency issue should be, hey, are we calling the same calls the exact way? Are we applying the rules the exact way at the same time? He believes that's more of what we're hearing with consistency, and they chuckle a little bit because they're like, listen, we've been hearing this complaint for years. At the same time, I talked to Nafise Collier the other day, and she says she thinks it's getting worse. And so there's this divide between the way the two groups kind of view what's going on right now. But the league acknowledges that it's a thing, that they want to get better. And, the big thing that they kept saying is, observed, educated, and held accountable. Those are the 3 things that all their refs have to kind of go through. And so my kind of question is, the kind of held accountable part, because we haven't seen a whole lot of that, or it's not publicly announced when someone, I don't want to say the word disciplined, but is held accountable from the official standpoint. But then you kind of go back to the big fracas the other day between the Fever and the Sun, and the next day they're upgrading technicals, and Angel Reese's hair gets pulled and it gets called just a regular common foul. And those are like the things that we as fans see and say, that just can't right. That's not right and doesn't make sense. And so I think that's where this kind of discord is kind of happening. So there's a hope that they're on the right path and that they are going to stick to their guns and do what they say as far as holding folks accountable. But from our side of things, we kind of just got to watch, because those things aren't exactly publicized. And so you just kind of go game by game and kind of cross your fingers each game and see how things are going to be officiated.
When it comes to the quality standpoint, Kareem, I get to use one of my favorite journalism quotes 2 days in a row on the show. I was using it with Eric Flack yesterday. You get it today. If one side says it's raining, or one person says it's raining, and someone else says it's not, our job is ultimately to go outside and find out. When you look at the quality of WNBA officiating as someone who has watched this league as a fan at first and now covered this league for a number of years now, do you think the quality is A, worrisome, and then B, to Nafisa Collier's point, do you think it's actually getting worse?
I'm not sure if it's getting worse, but I do think it's a thing. I do think it's a thing that when you watch, quite frankly, the NBA, that you feel like there's different, that there's not as many issues on that side. I would say even, we're talking about the W, but I would venture to go to the NCAA level also. It just feels like there's more, as much as they hate the word, inconsistency on the women's side than there is on the men's side. And I would also venture that probably can trace that back a little bit to the fact of the way the salary structures are set up. When you're in the NBA, you're fully salaried. You can only work for the NBA. That's it. That's your full-time job. On the women's side with the W, you get paid. Let's for example, I was talking to an official, and this was the example he gave me. You can get paid $2,000 per game with expenses from the WNBA. But say you're refereeing an SEC game, you get paid $5,000 a game, but without your expenses. So if you're trying to make this your profession, you're going to naturally, and I would say the most talented people would gravitate towards a more stable financial situation where, number one, you're fully salaried, and number two, this is all I've got to do. I don't have to do something else I don't have to have a side job. I don't necessarily have to do college games during the winter, all of these kind of things. I think I got off on a little bit of a different tangent, but point being, I do think there's a lot to clean up on the women's side, and I think the fact that it's gotten the game right now is just getting more attention than ever, that there's a lot more eyeballs out there witnessing it, so the conversation is getting a lot louder, and quite frankly, that does put a little bit more pressure on the league.
Kareem Copeland, reporter, Washington Post, with us here on the Hoffman Show. The reporting you did and talking to an actual official, to me, is what set this piece apart from, let's say, my griping about it over the years. Because I can also be like, hey, here's this press conference clip. And with my own eyes, I think it stinks. This reporting I thought was so interesting because it opens up a real question, Kareem, which is, can the WNBA afford is a silly term here in a way, because it's both directly on the nose, monetarily, literally afford. But I also mean this in a less literal sense. Can they afford to have full-time officials in a league that just spans the summer, right? The WNBA tips off in April is when training camps open. They tip off in May. They're done by October. Do they just expect referees not to take other jobs the rest of the year? And by the way, before anyone's like, well, they do it in the NBA, the NFL does not have full-time officials. So for leagues that have limited calendars, this is a problem across sports. So can the WNBA, within the both the financial and that kind of time constraint context, afford to have full-time officials? How would that work?
I think that's the big question, and even the official that I talked to was kind of pointing out to that same thing. Said, hey, if you pay me right, I'll give up all that other stuff, and I can completely focus on this, because it also affects officials when you're going back and forth from the college game to the WNBA game. You have to kind of adjust a little bit because they're different games, there's different requirements, so you kind of have to adjust. And he was saying, listen, there's people who don't adjust very well. There's people who are used to this college system, and then when it comes summertime and it's time to be in a pro mind frame, that they don't necessarily switch the same way. And so that's the big thing. Like when we talk about the financials, you said, can they afford it? That's the question, but we've got a big new $2.2 million media deal coming up. The CBA is being negotiated as we speak. And so that's kind of the next question is, how are they going to where and how are they going to apply these new funds? And does some of that go into officiating or address officiating or make that a more lucrative and stable situation for your officials, so you might not be losing the best of the best to the NBA, or you might not be losing the best to to people who decide, hey, if I just do my college games and I can do more games on that level and I can make technically game to game more money, and, you know, depending on how they arrange their travel and their meals and their hotels, you know, if you can arrange it where you can still make more money on those games, it makes the W less attractive. So that becomes the question that, quite frankly, isn't answered right now as they negotiate the new CBA. And, you know, we're less than, you know, what? They just announced the new media deal, 6 months ago, if that? Yeah. So we're still trying to see how this new windfall of cash is going to be divvied out and how it's long-term going to affect the league. But every year, you know, they're adding more games, they're adding more teams, and so there's more attention and more eyes, and there's going to be more games on TV. So as people watch more closely, you're going to have to – we were talking about being held accountable. They're going to be held accountable to have better officiating. And so that's the big question that we're all kind of waiting to see.
What's the current relationship between, on an officiating front, between the WNBA, the NBA, and the G League, and the resources that are available from a training perspective, and even a potential to cross games and have officials get extra reps and be able to work within a similar system, NBA to G League to W? Is there crossover? What's the relationship?
Well, essentially, the whole system is set up where they identify people, you know, young officials at lower levels, whether it's camps or maybe levels of NCAA or whatever. And so we start bringing you in the pipeline. And at that point, they get training, they get developed. They go out and they're still out working, but like the next step is they call it grassroots, where you kind of get in this program where you're doing summer camps, like the Boo Williams camp that they have here close to DC in the DMV. They start putting them in those kind of camps and watching them like grow and learn and get used to things. And then a certain amount of them kind of get up to the next level, where I think it's called the NBA Players Association has a top 100 camp each year.
Yep,
so
just happened. It's part of the NBA draft process. It literally happened a month ago.
Absolutely. So you go there and you start to, you know, you continue to grow and show who you are, and they evaluate you, and then, you know, they trim the list down even more. And so then at that point, you finally get to the point where you can work some G League games. And G League, essentially, G League and Summer League is kind of your training ground for those that go on to the WNBA and the NBA. Now, remember, the NBA, once you get to the NBA, you can't work any other league. You are contracted to that. You've got a full salary. You can only work NBA games. Not the same way for the W, because you can also still work college and still work other things during the off season. So that's kind of that's kind of the process. And again, going back to McCutcheon, he insisted that the WNBA is not a feeder league to the NBA. And I was talking to Eric Tebow, the old Mystics coach, who's now associate coach for the Lynx, and that was the question that he had. He said the league has to decide at some point whether this is the destination for officials or is this another step along the road. And so obviously there's a disconnect between coaches, players, and what the league sees as that, because they certainly don't feel like the officials are coming to the W as a destination, and the league is saying, no, it is a destination. However, the flat-out financials makes it where it can't be your only destination, even if that is your destination.
Right. That just feels like insulting to our collective intelligence, with all due respect to the league office. Like, one's a salaried job, one's not. Like, how like, do you want the job with the guarantees and benefits, or do you want the freelance gig? Like, what are we even talking about here? And that's like, in fairness to the league, on the other side of that, again, you're dealing with half the game. So to me, it feels like there should almost be like a WG League level and then an NBA level. And also, in fairness to the reality of the games, right? NBA players, if you were to put stopwatches on them, etc., are faster. The game is faster. It is harder to officiate the NBA game than the W game. That said, the style of play in the W and the accepted amount of physicality, like legal physicality, that has been a hallmark of that league, makes it very, very difficult to officiate. So I don't like, to me, that's a bunch of relevant information. I don't know what to do with it, but what I do know now, Kareem, is that it's clearly not working. Are there, like, have you found people that you're like, oh, that's a good idea? Or is this are all the negotiations really being kept in-house behind the scenes, if they're even happening at all?
It seems being kept in-house for the most part, but just kind of along my reporting, there's just certain things that everybody's kind of pointing out that's like, hey, we need to figure out, what physicality we're going to allow. There was a point coming into the season that freedom of movement. I was talking to the current Mystic coach, Trey Johnson. He said, hey, freedom of movement was supposed to be an emphasis this year, and people are getting grabbed and knocked down and slowed up. And, if you go into the paint in the WNBA game, oh my goodness, it is rough down there. And even going back to your comparison to NBA, they are two different styles of officiating, I would say, because of the two different styles of games and things you got to look out for and things like that. A big thing that people talked about is communication. Like, hey, some people do a very good job of communicating with with coaches and players, and that can head off a lot of this, a lot of the issues that arise. And some people just, quite frankly, aren't. And that would sounded like one of the things that kind of pop up more with people who go back and are really good at it, or cover or officiate a lot of college games, because it seems like you give a little bit more leeway to college coaches, because if a college coach gets on your bad side and then they report you to the league, then you can eventually get held out of, premier games. And so that affects your paycheck. Whereas when you're on the pro game, listen, you should be able to – it's all kind of about keeping control of the game. And if you don't have good communication, things get out of whack real quick. Just like, we keep coming back to that Fever Sun game. I think that's what it was. You didn't have control of game. And that's the thing that everybody kind of points out. The refs are supposed to have control of the game. And on the different levels, there seems to be a distance when that happens, and how much physicality they're allowing, the calls that they're making between a common foul, a technical, a flagrant one, because we saw in that instance, all of a sudden they had to go back the next day and adjust this. Okay, we're going to make this a flagrant 2. We're going to fine so-and-so. So when you have to kind of go back the next day and start adjusting things, that means things weren't called the right way on the floor in the first place. So I think all of this stuff is definitely being talked about behind the scenes, but, they're going to try to keep that stuff as in-house as possible.
All right, last one real quick is just as a basketball person covering the league. Like, we've mentioned the Suns fever fracas a couple times. Do you think they eventually got that right? Because I was not thrilled with how the penalties ended with that one. What did you make, before I tell you what I think, what did you make of what ultimately came of that hullabaloo?
I mean, you eventually. I didn't have any issues with the way they finally kind of got it, but I mean, it's. I feel like it's easy to turn around the next day and change the things, but you had already let it get out of control on the floor in the first point. That's the way I looked at it. Is that you had to get control of the game before you got to the point where I'm going, oh my gosh, I'm going blank. Where Sophie is essentially, putting somebody in a headlock. You know what I'm saying? Like that is the culmination of an entire game of things not being called or things being allowed to be more physical than it needs to be. That's kind of the way that I'd look at it. Now, how Mabry doesn't get more than just a technical or whatever. I think it was a technical that they originally called on her when she ran up on Caitlin and knocked her to the floor. And then the next day they upgraded it to a flagrant 2. And they're like, yeah, she should have been ejected. Well, that kind of stuff needs to happen in the moment, not the next day. And so, of course, that's why people are all riled up and taking little shots at each other and digs at each other throughout the game. Because, we know people are going to defend their teammates and defend their stars. And if you let somebody just run up and knock them to the floor with barely any consequence, all right, this is how it's going to go today. This is how we're going to play. All right. And all of a sudden you're losing control of the game. So that's whatever they kind of end up, the things and the adjustments and the fines the next day. That's not so much of my concern, because I want you to have control of the situation in the moment. And the official that I talked to, he was like, yeah, they completely blew that. That whole situation was horrible. Should have never got to that point because they blew the calls in the very first place.
Yeah, there was stuff leading up to it. Unpopular opinion, especially amongst very certain loud parts of the internet that let me know about it. I thought they got it right on the floor. I thought that, Caitlin was distracted. I'm not going to say, she flopped. She was distracted by the fact that she got poked in the eye, and Mabry, bumped her, and she went down really easy. And, that's
she
a
was
tech.
a little bit more than a bump.
I thought she went down easy. I didn't think that had to be a flagrant 2. I thought Cunningham should have been suspended because we don't tackle people in basketball. That was ridiculous. But that's just my personal opinion. If you wanted to throw Mabry out because she clearly escalated, I'm fine with that. But the Cunningham thing, not getting suspended for tackling someone and then looking to immediately start a fight, that can't happen. All right. Kareem Copeland, Washington Post. He does real reporting, and you can read it in the Washington Post, WashingtonPost.com/sports. Kareem, thanks for your time. As always, my friend, have a great weekend, and I'll see you at ESA or Care First Arena soon.
Absolutely, homie. Thank you. Appreciate you having me, though.
Absolutely. Kareem Copeland with us here on The Hoffman Show. When we get back, football. Who's got the best defensive line in the NFC East? That was a debate we had on the Take Command podcast. Myself, Logan Paulson. You'll hear it next before we discuss more on the Ace Bailey situation and why it is worth discussing beyond just it's really weird that he didn't want to, hey, is he a bad kid for not wanting to go to Utah? There's a lot more to it than that, and we'll get there coming up at 6 o'clock on The Hoffman Show. The Hoffman Show. We're on the Team 980. We are always live as well on the free Odyssey app, streaming live on YouTube too at the Team 980. Thanks again to Kareem Copeland, who just joined us. If you missed it, search the Hoffman Show wherever you get your podcasts later on tonight or this weekend, and it'll be sitting there waiting for you. Same with our chat with Zach Harper an hour ago on the NBA. Right now, though, speaking of podcasts, take command. If you haven't had a chance to listen to our NFC East positional group rankings, we rank the DBs, the linebackers, and the defensive backs across all four teams in the NFC East. Where do the Commanders stack up on the D-line? That's where we started, Logan Paulson and I. We always let you hear a little bit of Take Command here on the show, and it's about that time right now.
It's time to take command with former NFL tight end Logan Paulson and former Commanders beat reporter Craig Hoffman.
What's up? What's happening? Welcome in. It's the Take Command podcast. Craig Hoffman here. Logan Paulson there. Happy Thursday, everybody. It is time to rank defensive football players in groupings within the NFC East. I'm just
well
like,
done. Good on that intro, man. That was excellent.
How many words can I say to say what we're doing? It's our NFC East positional group rankings. This time the defense edition, and it's so funny how we have the same epiphany every year, and it's like, oh, we should also do. Oh, wait, we did that last year. Next week on this show, so the late week show. Of course, our mailbag will be early in the week. We're gonna rank the coaches in the NFC East. We did that last year. It goes very well. Nobody gets mad. And we do it perfectly. And so we're going to do head coaches, OCs, DCs next week. So look forward to that. But for today, the defense, Logan. And we're going to start along the defensive line. We'll hit the linebackers and then get back into the secondary. And I think this is interesting when you look at these defensive lines in this division, because I feel like there's a couple that have like big potential upside, but also some low floor, including the Commanders. You have an Eagles team that's still very good and arguably has the best player in the division in Jalen Carter. But they also lost a lot of depth, and they're maybe second best guy on that line in Milton Williams, certainly second best interior player. And then you have the Giants, who everyone is sad if you're in New York after the offensive rankings, but your D-line's really, really good.
Yeah,
and
very good.
I actually think we might have a Giants logo at the top of the graphic here. But where are you at with where you want to start with the defensive line groups in this division?
Yeah, this was a really tough process, kind of like looking through your notes, looking at sack production, looking at players, looking at kind of, and trying to distinguish like pedigree. Cause I think you brought it up with Philly. Like I look at Jalix Hunt, right, who was not an overly productive player last year. And like he had moments of flash. And I think the last 2 games, specifically the playoff run, he looked really, really good. But if you kind of look prior to that, he was kind of, I don't want to say middling because I think he's a good player, but like he's still a developmental edge rusher, like Nolan Smith, still a developmental edge rusher, right? So even though they're these big names, right? And like when you look at like Philadelphia's offseason camp, like everyone's talking about how good Jalix Hunt looks, how he's going to take on this pass rushing role, blah, blah, but he hasn't done it yet, right? So even Nolan Smith, I think Nolan Smith is a really good run player. I think he's a good football player, but like in terms of adding pass rush, like which unit's going to be the most dominant? And then you've got Jalen Carter. They lost Milton Williams. So I think that's like a sneaky loss because like when you go back and watch games, like he's not as disruptive, but he's a disruptive element to that group. So I didn't really know where to lie with this. So ultimately, like I think if I had to like gun to my head, like the group that I'm most afraid of right now, and again, where do we? January, whatever the date is, June 24th.
June 24th.
Like
what's cool about January 24th? I think the Commanders were still playing in the playoffs at that point.
That's pretty wild, isn't it?
Which is cool.
Yeah. So I think the one for me that sticks out is probably the New York Giants. Like I just think about Brian Burns last year. He had a really good year, 10 sacks. He had 46 hurries last year, which is incredible. Dexter Lawrence, you mentioned Jalen Carter. Dexter Lawrence might be the best player in the division, like full stop,
yes.
Which is a crazy conversation to be having about a nose guard. And I think when you look at his first, was it 8, 9 games, maybe 10 games, he was the best player in the NFL. And obviously he cooled as the year went on, but like that's the kind of talent you're talking about. And that's not like long time ago. That was last year. He was one of the more dominant players in the division. I think he had close to 10 sacks. Kayvon Thibodeau's never been super productive, but you bring in the first pick, or what is he? The first pick overall, right? In edge rusher, right? Second pick?
Third pick.
Third pick, right? So
yeah.
Really like, and in terms of thinking back to, and we talked about biases on the last show, right? Like, I don't know if there's going to be a more dynamic edge rusher that I've evaluated coming out of college than Abdul Carter, right? So I look at that group and I'm like, that group seems absolutely terrifying. And then I think they did a good job of adding some depth pieces here this offseason with guys like Robinson, who was in Jacksonville last year, but he's like this good 5 technique with some pass rush upside. And I think about him next to Dexter Lawrence. I'm like, man, that could be a pretty devastating combination. So as of right now, like that to me feels like the group that's going to be really dynamic. And then you brought in Darius Alexander also, who's kind of this hyper athletic, long from Toledo defensive tackle, like in the rotation there. So again, I think Philly's got some really good football players on the roster. I do think you're asking them to project in a way. And here I am talking about projection and Abdul Carter. But I think with Burns, I think he's probably, outside of Micah Parsons, maybe the best edge rusher in the division. And then you've got Dexter Lawrence, and then you've got all these really nice kind of athletic depth pieces around the interior. And I'm really going to bet on Abdul Carter to be good. And then you throw Kayvon Thibodeau as like your third guy, who was a former, was he top 10 pick? I don't remember.
He was top 5 pick. I think he was the 5th pick.
Yeah. So like, I don't know, man, like that feels like a really dynamic, deep group. And again, like they were really productive last year. Like they were crazy productive last year. So why would anything be different this year? And they've just gotten more talented, at least on paper.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think this is the best group in the division. And something that I should have said before we even dove into the D-line, just to take a step back real quickly, and had the perfect opportunity, Logan, because we were teasing the coaches show next week. But like last year, remember, part of what made these rankings so difficult, especially the coach rankings, but also the defensive position group rankings, is we had no idea how anybody was going to get used because all 4 defensive coordinators were brand spanking new. This year, you have Eberflus in Dallas, going back where he was the linebackers coach, before he got his DC job in Indy and then the head job in Chicago. But other than that, everyone's back for their second year. So we have a much better idea schematically of how these guys are going to be used. Like Shane Bowen is still there in New York, and we'll say what we think of Shane Bowen next week, but at least we know, like, okay, fundamentally Dexter Lawrence is going to do X for Shane Bowen, and Brian Burns is going to do Y for Shane Bowen, and the body types that he likes, the guys that succeed, the guys that don't. And when you look at what they've got, like they've got high end guys like Lawrence, Burns, Carter if he can produce as a rookie, and they have depth. They have guys, down, whether it's high upside depth like Alexander, or some guys that have a little bit more, staying power in the league. Guys like Chauncey Golston is there on the outside. He's just like, nondescript NFL pro, but like a pro. And there's a lot of those guys, obviously in Washington. Like I do think
even
New
like
York,
Nunez Roches, you know what I mean? Like he's been in the league for like 20 years. And that's not a lot, but like 15 years, 12 years, something like that. And he's just a good, solid 4-eye.
Yeah. I mean, Elijah Chapman made some plays for them last year. I remember watching the Commanders games and be like, oh, that dude flash. He's now a third string for them, a defensive tackle.
Yeah, no, and I even go down the list. Like you got DJ Davidson, he's excellent. Elijah Chapman, did you just mention him? Like he was awesome last year for them.
Yeah, he was great
in terms of being explosive, dynamic. Like in terms of line stunts, some of the stuff they were doing with him. So yeah, like. I don't know, man. Like it just seems like they've got a lot of depth. Seems like that's the strength of the team. Seems like that's a strength of the position in the division. And I don't know, like it feels weird again. And maybe I'm kind of valuing Abdul Carter here in a very high way, but I just think if you put him as a true stand-up edge, the way he can drop, the way he can rush, the like he had one of the best first step get-offs I've ever seen in college. You know what I'm saying? And so like, does that translate? I'm going to say yes. And so I don't know. It just seems like they've got a lot of depth, a ton of depth of like quality depth, and they've got some really high end talent. So to me, this feels like the best group in the division.
Yeah, for sure. Then it becomes 2, 3, 4, obviously, and we haven't talked about Dallas or Washington at all yet. But to kind of circle back to Philly real quick, like Carter, if it's not Lawrence, he's probably the best player in the division on the defensive side of the ball. Certainly Parsons. On the D line. I mean, I guess Parsons. Duh. But Carter's awesome. He's a guy that could eventually make Myles Garrett's making like $40 million now. Like, is he and Micah are the next maybe $40 million defensive players, considering what the value that they bring, and the skill sets they bring. I think Nolan Smith is a really fascinating guy because he's thinner. Was he weigh like 240 as an edge? Yeah. People are like, oh man, he's just like, and he runs a 4.3. So, speed rusher. And it's like, that's actually not who he is at all as a player.
He's better run defender for sure.
He's a run defender and he's really, really, really good at it. And specifically in this division, the ability to chase down a mobile quarterback, namely Jaden Daniels, is a really important aspect. So even though he's not like a great pass rusher, his edge setting and his ability to maintain the pocket and keep control on, like, contain on the edge in a way that's a little bit different athletically is a really valuable skill. You combine that with Carter, Jordan Davis, and then the problem is, I think for Philly, is the depth kind of fades away. I mean, Hunt is obviously interesting. We'll see what Azeez Ojulari is, but that interior depth is not quite as strong as it has been unless some of these young guys pan out. I do think that Philly's probably earned the benefit of the doubt over the years when it comes to defensive linemen.
Sure.
I would trust that they probably have drafted well and that 1, 2, or all of these guys are going to work out just fine.
Yeah, and it's crazy because I think Josh Uche is a good player. Like he was in New England last year, like very solid edge, kind of crafty rusher. Azeez Ojulari, we've talked about a lot. He's in New York and skilled. And if you just want to rush the passer, that's what he'll be able to do for you. But it is weird looking at the roster, looking at the depth chart here and kind of be like, man, there's no established guy in the perimeter in the way that they've always had Brandon Graham. They've always had somebody.
I don't think we mentioned Josh Sweat's departure is obviously an enormous thing here, him going to Arizona.
Yeah. And then, who was the guy that, I forget his name, that signed in with the New York Jets? Hassan Reddick. Yeah. They've always had somebody on the perimeter that's been very productive, been established. And even Brian Burns the specialty edge rusher from New York, the little short guy who didn't play for them. But they've had guys that have been very productive over the course of their career. And then you're asking kind of some younger players who I think are good players. I like these players a lot. Nolan Smith, Jalen Hugg, I like them a lot, but I do think there's a little bit of a developmental arc. And then you go to the interior and Jordan Davis, I like what he does, but he's always a little bit inconsistent, and I think that's something Philly fans have been very quick to kind of point out. And when you watch him, you're like, man, that like here's this crazy splash play where he's like forcing the pressure or he's splitting a double team, and he gets quiet for a couple plays. And so can he achieve that level of dominance that I think a lot of people thought he was going to be the next Dexter Lawrence, right? And he has not played to that level. Obviously, Jalen Carter has been as advertised. Moro Ajomo, I like a lot. Moro Ajomo, I like a lot as like a kind of rotational guy. He'll probably be their pass rush guy in sub, which I think is a nice way to kind of offset some of those interior departures. But it doesn't feel like it's got the same kind of teeth to it that it's had. I'm not saying it's a bad group, like, so
Right.
Philly fans calm down, but like, does it have that dominant player to offset Jalen Carter, like to support him? And I think you're kind of relying on, again, Hunt and Smith to kind of take those steps, which is totally a reasonable expectation. But how does that compare to Dallas, with Micah Parsons and some of those other guys that are really kind of more established, more consistent football players?
So speaking of, Dante Fowler returns to Dallas. He obviously had a monster production year, but is a complicated player beyond the stats. That he goes back to Dallas as a pass rush option for them. They lose Tank Lawrence in the offseason. He goes to Denver. Mozzie Smith was better in year 2 than year 1. Year 1 was bad. Year 2 was fine. We'll see what he can be in year 3. They re-sign Osia Odighizuwa, who's a very, very good player on the interior. Obviously, Micah. They also draft or bring in Marshawn Nealand, or have Marshawn Nealand, I should say, that drafted last year. Solomon Thomas, the veteran, is there now as a backup on the interior. They draft Ezeraku as well, who obviously we spent a lot of time talking about. We thought he could be an option here as a pass rush kind of guy. This is an interesting group because I think there are some really, potentially, like if Ezeraku hits, like, man, that's a steal. Guy considering what he was in college.
Yeah.
They've got obviously Micah. Dante Fowler in the right spot is a really, really dangerous player. But the thing is, like, he's currently listed as the guy starting opposite of Micah.
Sure.
And if Micah Parsons, now Micah, even though he's this pass rush maniac, is also a nasty edge setter. So like Micah being a starting defensive end is actually fine. Even if body type wise he's quote unquote
right?
light. Like, it's like, oh, that's not what defensive ends look like. Oh, he plays like that?
Yeah.
Fine.
Yeah.
But Dante Fowler being opposite of that is interesting to me. And I also do wonder if, it was one thing when Tank Lawrence, who was a big, like, prototypical massive 4-3 defensive end, his nickname was freaking Tank. Like, when that's the guy that's opposite of Micah, how do offenses adjust now that they don't have to necessarily worry about that other side because they don't have that size on the opposite side? And are there some things they can do to try to temper Micah's impact, especially as a run defender, and not to mention some of the pass rush stuff that he's able to do and where he's always going to get extra attention?
Yeah, I just want to point out that they do have guys with some size there, like Peyton Turner. We saw him last year in New Orleans. He's like one of the freakier defensive end body types in the NFL. He's like kind of the 35-inch, 6'6", 6'7", 280-pound guy that always seems to manifest out of New Orleans because they draft those guys at a high level. So like they could easily put him out there. And I don't think he's a great pass rusher, but I think on first, second down, when healthy, that's a big caveat with him. Like he's a pretty like consistent player. Marshawn Nealand was a guy they drafted in the second round, if I'm not mistaken, who I loved coming out of Western Michigan. Is that right?
Yep.
And
Western Michigan, second round pick, 56
very physical,
overall
high
last year.
motor. So I think getting a guy like their depth there again is not bad. And I think I just want to point out another kind of sneaky signing or drafting of Jay Toya, who to me was the best run stopping defensive tackle, nose guard type player in the draft last year. He's like 355. He's got short, stubby arms. He's kind of built like a fire hydrant, but out of UCLA, played a part of that great defense at UCLA. So I think he could be an awesome kind of fit there to offset some of Mozzie Fist's deficiencies. However, after going through it a little bit, I do feel like the group in Philly is just way more consistently good. I think the floor for Philly is so much higher because of coaching, because of utilization, because of how they play just generally. Here, it just feels like a lot's got to come together. I'm not saying it won't, but you mentioned like Fowler, Peyton Turner, you're asking him to kind of exceed expectations. Marshawn Nealand, who I really liked in his limited snaps last year, again, is coming into a bigger role. What does that look like? I think Ja is probably going to play a lot for them in terms of run stopping downs on first, second down. Like rookie player, Donovan Zaraku projection. Like, we loved him as a prospect, but it just feels like the ceiling is probably pretty high, but I think the floor is also pretty low, much like we talked about their offensive line. Like, I feel really good about this group, but I think a lot of pieces kind of got to fit together in a way that Philly's defensive line, that's not really the case. Like, Hunt is an excellent run defender on the edge. Nolan Smith is an excellent run defender. Jordan Davis is excellent in the run defense game. Moro Ojomo is excellent in the run defense. And so sometimes I think when you just have a solid run defending, physical, hard hat group, it just sets the table in a really nice way. And then on top of that, you kind of say to yourself, okay, there's some pass rush upside in here also. So I'm going to bet Philly here at 2 and probably go Dallas at 3 if I had to categorize it.
So that leaves us with Washington.
Yeah.
And we have spent quite a bit of time, Logan Paulson, talking about the Washington Commanders defensive line this offseason. We like a lot of things that happened here, which I think is an important thing to say, because when you talk about a solid run defense, it looks like they could have it. They shored up the edge with guys like Dietrich Wise, bringing back Cleveland Ferrell, who was good last year until he was hurt, and then he wasn't very good, but the injury clearly was having an impact. Dorrance Armstrong, obviously, he signed a 3-year deal when he signed, so he's back. And then, Jalen Holmes, who played really well for them at times last year. And then they have all the girth inside with Payne. They signed Kinlaw, Jerzon Newton. They signed Eddie Goldman. They bring back Carl Davis and Sheldon Day. So Javonte Jean-Baptiste is another name that should mention. Like, that's a lot of dudes who are good NFL football players that they have. It's just that the upside is not necessarily there unless Newton takes a huge step or Payne plays at a level that he hasn't played at in a couple of years, especially or produces at a level he hasn't in a couple of years, or Kinlaw clicks. And it's just a lot of ors and a lot of what ifs. And considering the quality of the others in Dallas, we talked about the what ifs, but like they also have Micah Parsons. Right. Does that just by default leave Washington 4th?
I think when you were talking through it, I was like, well, what's really the difference between the two groups? And it's definitely Micah Parsons. It's like his ceiling and what he brings, his ability to create. Like, just watching those two, I went back and watched those 2 games from last year that Washington played against them. Yeah. His ability to just kind of take over a game, like the way like Kobe Bryant would, like isolation basketball, like I'm rushing over a guard, like good luck blocking me, or I'm going to beat this tackle. Like his ability to create TFLs, sacks, quick wins, like to not blitz the way they didn't at points last year, and for him to create the pressure, I thought was really impressive. So I just wanted to say, I do think, I like Dorrance a lot. I think he's going to get about 10 sacks this year. That's how confident I am he's going to play well, right? Duran, I think, is a really, really, really good football player. But is he an elite player the way some of those other interior players we talked about are? At this moment, no, right? I think Kinlaw has a tremendous ceiling. But has he done it recently? There's flashes of it, but not the consistency, right? Dietrich Wise, I think, is the most kind of consistent get on base selection at that left defensive end spot you could possibly want. But we're not talking about high floor players here. We're talking about what's going to elevate the ceiling of this group. And when you compare it to, some of these other edge rushers we talked about, I've been very open about how much I like Dietrich Wise. He's going to get you 5 sacks this year, right? And he's going to play great run defense on first, second down. But there's the ceiling isn't there the same way that is with some of these other players. And so, yeah, Cleveland Ferrell kind of in the same bucket. I think Eddie Goldman's a really sneaky addition, but he's a sneaky addition because he fills a certain type of role in this defense, right? So I think that's where you say you're banking on the oars, a lot of projection from Jerzon, a lot of projection from Kinlaw. And if those guys hit, oh my gosh, watch out, we're going to be a pretty dominant group. But again, there's still, I think even if those guys playing at really high level football, I don't know if they have the ceilings of some of those other players we were just talking about, like a Diggy Zua, for example. I don't know if he's always kind of a 8-9 sack kind of guy, creates a ton of pressure in the backfield. I don't know if there's a guy like that on the roster right now for the Washington Commanders, and we'll see. And I hope I'm wrong, and I hope that this staff does a good job getting the best out of him. But I do think the floor is improved. I don't know what the ceiling is for this group. Yeah,
I think the floor might be higher than Dallas's, because I think still, if the Mozzie Smith thing doesn't work, Adigi Zua is a great penetrator, but that's a very specific kind of player. And your guy out of UCLA is a rookie. There's a chance that they just get run all over right straight up the gut again, and Micah becomes less effective because they're never in pass rush situations. There's only so much you can do as a run defender because it's a kind of a weak link type system. So there's a chance, obviously, that it doesn't go well. And I also think the gap here isn't New York is really, really good. The gap between Philly and kind of the guesswork between Philly, Dallas, Washington, I could see all three of those being in any of the spots by the end of the year. But I think if we're going into it and we're being honest with ourselves, despite the fact that this is a Washington Commanders podcast and we have spent lots of time talking about how we think they made smart strategic moves that will help the defense as a whole this offseason relative to the other three, they're coming in at fourth.
And you took the words right out of my mouth. Like, I think this group is better. I think it makes the defense better, right? And I think ultimately, if you're better on first, second down, we've talked about this before, like you are better on second and long. You're better on third and long. I think these are all good moves. But if you're just looking at the group in isolation and not in the context of the defense, not in the context of the offense that they're playing with, I think it's important just to kind of be like, hey, they might not be as talented as some of these other groups in the division. Because like you talked about, Micah Parsons is going to be probably the highest defensive paid player here very shortly, right? You know, Dexter Lawrence is, again, at times the best defensive player in the NFL. Jalen Carter, same thing. So there's lots of really uber talented people. And as of right now, the Commanders don't have that guy. But as we talked about, like sometimes just playing great run defense and being where you're supposed to be is exactly what you need from the defense. And that might end up being valuable enough for this group.
There are three $30+ million defenders in the division. The Commanders do not have one of them. And that is kind of how it ultimately comes down. All right, when we get back, well, first of all, if you want to hear the linebacker and the defensive back rankings, check out Take Command this weekend. Wherever you get your podcast, just search Take Command, and there it'll be. Pick up, 25 minutes in, 23 minutes in, and you'll basically pick up where we just left you off. Coming up next here, live on the Hoffman Show. Let's do this, actually. We were going to talk about some of the Ace Bailey stuff, but Charles Allen, the D.C. City Council member, was on with Grant and Danny earlier this afternoon. Mark Ein was on with the Junkies this morning. And I think it is a better decision for us to talk about some of the RFK stuff. We had Flack on yesterday to talk about it, but with now stakeholders, including Mark Ein, a partial owner of the Commanders, and a DC City Council member chiming in. Let's do that next, plus our weekend preview, even though Anthony's not here, still brought to you by nobody, is coming as well here on the Team 980. All right, final hour of the Hoffman Show here on the Team 980. Always live as well on the free Odyssey app. Metal Chris in for Anthony. I am, Chris, that's a funny hour opener for you to play because Haney getting back from vacation was kind of the nexus of that. And now that he's gone to France for a week, I'm terrified of what it will be like when he gets back. How long is it going to take Anthony to get his head out of the croissants and lock back in?
That I can't tell you.
I don't know either. Well, hopefully quickly. Hopefully he's back with a weekend to recover and get his brain back on American time. But we'll see. That's not even next week problem. That's a 2 weeks from now problem. So we'll get to that then. Wrapping up here, opening the final hour of the show, talking about the latest on RFK Stadium, because we've now heard from some of the stakeholders. We talked about this yesterday with Eric Flack, who's new reporting on the fact that the DC City Council is taking some of the stadium considerations, or is taking the stadium consideration, the stadium proposal, out of the budget, which could push the decision on it past the July 15th deadline. Not what I think Commanders fans who just want to see this deal done are looking for. Obviously, getting a deal done that's a good deal for all involved is important. And that leads us to the comments this morning on the Sports Junkies by Mark Ein, who I believe might join us next week as well. So we'll look forward to following up with Ein then. But also, Charles Allen, the city council member who represents Ward 6, he was on Grant and Danny earlier today. So let's hear first from Ein, who was asked about, how concerned are you that this isn't going exactly as you had hoped, as there looks to be some delays here in getting the stadium deal approved, done, and signed by the time the Commanders wanted it to be.
You can look at it from so many different dimensions, but first of all, in D.C., there have been 3 stadiums built. And every single one has transformed the area it was in. When I moved back to D.C. in the 90s, I lived down the street from where Cap One Arena is that literally a block away was a red light district. The East End was forgotten. No one came over. You build Cap One, that part of town's completely transformed. Then you do the baseball stadium. You go drive down there. It's actually incredible. I don't ever go down there, and it blows my mind how an old industrial area is now literally just building after building after building. And then you go to the soccer stadium, where I actually own the land under the soccer stadium. It was a junkyard and an old warehouse, and there was a coal-fired Pepco power plant there that was never going to move until the land was needed. You build a soccer stadium, it gets transformed. So, we have these case studies of what happens, and then you have 180 acres on that part of town where it hasn't gotten the same investment. And here's the perfect catalyst to do exactly the same thing, but actually even bigger. So that's one lens. And then the other thing I'd say is, I've lived the journey here. I was on the board to bring the Olympics here. I was co-chair of the group to try to bring the 2026 World Cup to D.C. And that was so frustrating because FIFA badly wanted to have games in D.C. next year. It's very unusual for a capital city not to get games, but we didn't have a stadium. They made us bid for the World Cup with the Baltimore Stadium. And what people may forget is that the National Fan Festival for the World Cup was going to be on the National Mall. We were going to have 3 of the biggest teams staying in D.C. All that's gone. And, yeah, that's nice because you get to go to games, but the economic impact of stuff like that is so massive. And then you listen at the press conference, Roger talked about that, he had no promises, but certainly you're going to be considered for Super Bowls. The economic impact in New Orleans was $1.2 billion for the Super Bowl. So, these things are economic drivers.
So those numbers from Ein I think are worth pointing out, that those are numbers that many economists disagree with in terms of the economic impact. I also think it's kind of undeniable there's a large economic impact. There just is. It's just a massive amount of revenue. And unlike, some of the other things that economists point out about stadiums, where they're like, well, the entertainment dollars will be spent somewhere, and if they're not spent at the stadium, they'll be spent at the movie theater, and if they're not spent at the movie theater, they'll be spent at the restaurant. And it's all of these things that economists point out just eventually don't pass the logic test of what happens if you have something that has 1 million people come to it. And specifically for the district, to have that money spent in the district versus Maryland and Virginia is a big deal, to have the jobs. And I think Mark's first point that he made about the economic transformation or the transformation period of the different areas that he's referenced, with Southeast, with Audi Field, Southwest, with Nats Park, and then Capital One Arena, it's very clearly been success stories. The question is, for whom? I think that's always one of the considerations, is like, okay, well, we don't want to kick people out of their homes. You know, if there is low income housing and people that have lived there for generations at any income level, we're not looking to kick people out. But if you literally have nothing, and this is, I think, another unique thing to RFK, you know, Nats Park, you could at least make some kind of argument that you misplaced a lot of people, you displaced a lot of people. That the changing nature of that part of town, like, really upset what had been the status quo. And some of that you could argue is good, with crime rates or this or that. But those are, you know, that's not about the people. That's about the resources, and that's a whole separate conversation. But you now have a ton of luxury apartments. Like, oh yeah, look how much housing they created. Yeah, it's all just very, very expensive. And so part of the RFK deal is that there's going to be affordable housing, and like, that stuff all needs to be really relevant. That stuff all needs to be centered to make sure that you are taking care of the people in the neighborhoods that you are disrupting, but also understanding the trickle-down effects of, and I don't say trickle-down because that's a specific economic term, and hot take, I don't think trickle-down economics actually work, but the second-order effects of the economic movement that happens of, okay, this tax revenue is generated from this thing, and then that goes over here in this pile, and that funds that thing, and that can ultimately help drive the future of a city, because kids have better experiences at school and learn more and get better grades and go to better schools and come back and are the future leaders that invent the thing that does the thing and make all of our lives better. So, you know, the numbers and how these things are calculated are typically very friendly to the cities, because these are often legacy projects for politicians. But there's also some amount of logic that just we've had Andy Zimbalist on the show. We've had what's his name? Oh my God. The other economist who hates stadiums. Like, we've had those guys on the show, and there's some amount of logic tests that I find hard to believe on some of their arguments as well, but they're the economists and I am not. All right. Charles Allen was on with Grant and Danny. Of course, he is the Ward 6 City Council member today. And let's actually, Chris, this was not on our list, Metal Chris, but can you pull up the clip 12 for a second, and then we'll play some of the ones that I had previously identified. But Grant and Danny, amongst the other larger picture stuff that we'll get to next, asked about a piece of news that came out recently that the Nats have actually paid off their loans early. And since we were just talking about Nats Park and the transformation at Navy Yard, I thought this would be an interesting thing to let you hear in terms of how that impacts this situation with RFK Stadium moving forward and the city budgets.
There's nothing about the ballpark why the bonds are being paid off early. That's 2/3 of the ballpark fee that go into that come from taxes around the rest of the city. That's a choice that the city's making to free up our ability to finance this deal. And we have to actually pay a penalty to do it. So paying off the bonds at the ballpark has nothing to do with, hey, isn't it been successful? Because 2/3 of the money that go into the ballpark fee come from other places all over the city. And we're actually going to have to pay a penalty to pay that off. So we're paying more. That's all about freeing up debt cap space so that we can do financing for another deal.
Gotcha. No, that's good to know. I still would say it's a success sitting in the Navy Yard right now, working.
I don't disagree.
We wouldn't have been doing that otherwise, but yeah.
I don't disagree with you. That part's been very successful, but in terms of paying off the bonds early, that's not a link you can make around the success around the ballpark. Creating a venue that has more than 200 events per year, big major events, that drives success. That's why you heard me early on arguing for the arena, locking down the Nats to get a renewed lease. But a football stadium with 20 to 25 events is a fundamentally different thing than something that happens all year long.
I think that's well put in terms of how some of this works by Charles Allen, and also the fact that there's just some accounting tricks that are going to have to be done here, and that's what it sounds like. Hey, we'll pay this small price, but this opens up this other thing over here, and that allows us to do this other thing over here, and hopefully it all works out in the end. And that's up to the accountants, and it's up to, that's why we elect these people to do that kind of hard work, and we hope that they do it earnestly, honestly, and that gets to kind of where we are now with RFK, which is, are they doing it earnestly and honestly, or are they doing it to make political statements and get their pound of flesh? And is this just a giant political fight, or is there substantive issues at play? Charles Allen gave his perspective. You'll hear it through more of his conversation with Grant and Danny next here on the Hoffman Show. But first, the latest from the world of women's sports, presented to you by Wawa. Chicken how you want it at Wawa, with customizable roasted and crispy chicken sandwiches. Our weekend preview is coming up in just a little bit here on the Hoffman Show. Right now, continuing to talk about the latest news around the RFK Stadium deal that is, let's call it tenuous at the moment, between DC City Council and the Washington Commanders and the mayor's office. Of course, the mayor's office and the Commanders are on one side of the table, so to speak. City Council is on the other. And Charles Allen is a city council member, who Ward 6's representative, who joined Grant and Danny earlier today. And to hear from him now on some of this, starting off with kind of why is there delay. I will not re-ask all of the questions because we have Grant and Danny's questions in these clips here. But the premise here of kind of like, why are we having this discussion versus just passing this thing? The mayor and the Commanders must have done a great deal. What does City Council want to know?
So what is the bigger issue then? Because the last part you say is not a good deal. That's debatable, and that is continuing to be debated by a lot of people. But the other part is we need more time. We don't have enough time. So what is the issue? That the deal's not good or that you need more time?
Well, both. I mean, I don't know the last time you spent over $1 billion, but you probably didn't do it in just a couple of weeks. So you got to spend a little time being able to look at it. We have a independent economic analysis that's taking place. It'll come back in the next couple of weeks. We've got tons of questions that have gone out that we don't have answers to. Spend it a few weeks, spend it a few months to make sure you get it right for when you're talking about over $1 billion. I mean, this is the second largest public subsidy for a stadium in American history. You got to get that right. So we're going to take our time and make sure we do that.
And that seems fair. The only question that we'll get to a little bit later, Charles Allen's answer to, is like, at what cost? At some point, the waiting, answering these questions costs money in its own right. These independent executive or economic advisors don't do this stuff for free. So inherently, by looking into all of this, you are spending money. That said, if that money spent gets a better deal for the city, that could pay for itself and then some by a factor of a lot. So as they look at this deal, logical follow-up was...
Oh, great questions.
So what are some of those questions, council member, that you say haven't been answered yet that you're looking for answers to?
Oh, great question. So right now, we're trying to figure out, so how is this thing financed? So right now, let's take a look at the parking. I've been very critical of 8,000 parking spaces. That's way too much. But right now, the deal is structured that not only does DC taxpayers build all these massive parking lots that'll sit empty most of the time, but all the parking revenue goes to the team. They don't pay any taxes on it. That's not even how we deal with the other parking lots. So have they built the financing that they're putting in based off of just taking all your parking money and skipping over the tax dollars? What are some of the fundamentals and financials around this deal? Those are the types of questions you got to ask. How are you going to move 65,000 people here? I've got a whole series of questions to our metro system with the commander saying, help me understand how you're going to move people in and out of here. Those are questions that your legislative body, your elected leaders have got to get answers to. So there's a ton of things we're still trying to make sure we understand.
Again, logical and fair. Now, what I will say on the other side of that is I don't know how much the Commanders have actually answered those questions. And Allen is like, whoa, and like, I don't know. He might be 100% right that they don't have answers or have not answered yet. I do find there to be a little bit of cognitive dissonance of that's too many parking spots, but I don't understand how you're going to get everybody there. There's obviously the answer might be Metro, and then it's like, well, our Metro isn't up ready for that. So how are we going to pay for that? Updating the Metro stations. Is that on us or is that part of your $2.3 billion? So again, these are all valid questions. And I will say in the name of journalism that if this stuff was more public, then we'd have some of the answers. Like, yes, we have elected you to do this, City Council and Mayor Bowser, as citizens of the district. But, for instance, when you are kicking Mark Seagraves out of meetings where this stuff is being discussed, we are just sitting here waiting on stuff that we would also, as the public, would like answers to. And thus, more transparency does feel like it would be better. But what do I know? I'm just a guy with a radio show. The Hoffman Show is this radio show here on the team at 980. Grant and Danny, our counterparts over on 106.7 The Fan, Charles Allen, city council member who you've been hearing from earlier today. And they asked him my big question, like this July 15th deadline that Mayor Bowser and the team have put down, like, what's the deal with that?
So when you say it's going well, that's good. For the team, though, they were hoping this would be wrapped up in the summer, and they put out a statement, I believe yesterday, maybe the day before, suggesting that July 15th is still vital here. And you just said you're going to have hearings 2 weeks after that, and you're talking about the fall, which is not the same timeline as theirs. And it sounds like maybe even in the fall that you're hoping to agree to a deal that isn't even on the table yet, right?
There have to be a lot of changes, and so that's going to take a little time. But I would expect you'd see a vote sometime in the fall. But
when you say the fall, is that September? Is that November? Like, what do you mean by that?
My hunch would be it's more in the September-October timeframe, but there's not a set date on that. But listen, if you were the Commanders or if you're the mayor, of course you're going to tell everybody, gosh, it's got to happen by this date or everything falls apart. Listen, the Commanders have made no secret. They want to be in D.C., and D.C. is coming in full faith, working hard to figure out, is there a deal that can be had here and what changes have to happen? So people need to have a little bit of ice water in their veins here and realize, like, this is a billion-dollar industry. We're all talking to each other and working toward what will ultimately be a decision.
Very mature answer, but like the July 15th deadline, what they're saying is if we don't hit it, it's the Women's World Cup, can't bid for it. Commanders 2030 season, not going to be ready. So if that, like, is that a real deadline? That to me is the core question. And they asked Charles Allen about it on G&D.
What bluff to call? It's not going to happen by July 15th. So it's an artificial deadline that people want to put on us. For what? What is
they
the
could go back to
July
Maryland
15th?
and get the project started if they wanted to.
Really? Governor Moore is already talking about the future of that site and how he finally has a chance to do something different there. That's not going to happen. This is so different than what you saw take place in Virginia, where D.C. worked hard to get Cap 1 back, which should never even gotten to that place. The dynamics are not playing out similarly here. You've got a Commanders team that wants to be in D.C. You've got D.C. leaders that are in good faith negotiating and working with the team on that. So I'm not worried about a July 15th date at all. I don't think you should be either.
It depends. Like that what Charles Allen is telling you there is he, and I would assume his colleagues on the council, think that's a fake deadline that is meant to put pressure on them. And when he referenced earlier, having ice water in his veins, like, we're just going to stare down that deadline and be like, go ahead. What are you going to do? My question is, like, what is the real deadline then? When can this get done by? Or when does this have to be done by to start construction in time that FIFA will be like, yes, we will give you the 2031 Women's World Cup? Because not only would it probably be a game or two, I think after skipping us in 2026 for the Men's World Cup because our stadium currently is not up to par, I think they'll give 2031 Women's World Cup to the U.S. for the final. Like, I think the Women's World Cup in 2031 will be won at a stadium yet to be built at the RFK Stadium site if this thing gets done on time. So when is done on time? And then also the 2030, before that, 2030 NFL season. It's got to be ready by September of 2030. Otherwise, the Commanders cannot play. I don't think they're going to say, like, oh, well, okay, we'll play our home games and have our new home opener starting in November. Or we'll play our entire road schedule first so that our home opener is in November. Like, no, that's not how it's going to go down. There's certain things you could probably do, like certain finishing touches that you could put on the stadium afterwards. Like, you have to get it operational. Like, that stuff takes time. And that time is shrinking away quickly in a heavily unionized city, which I am all for in terms of the electricians and the construction folks and everybody else who making sure they have their protections. But then you have to negotiate the deals with the unions. That limits construction to certain parameters. And like, there's a lot of stuff that you have to navigate that is in place for good reasons that doesn't change your timeline to be, get bent necessarily just to build a football stadium because you're trying to do this thing. Like, this stuff is complicated, and there is a real deadline somewhere. And what I have yet to hear from anyone is what that real deadline is. If it's not July 15th and the commanders in the mayor's office are insisting that it is. But by the same token, city council is just like, we don't want to be boxed in. And I get that too, because this is important to get it right. And so everyone kind of has a point, but there are eventually somewhere deep within all of these points are some non-negotiables. And that's what nobody seems to have a concrete answer on. All right, it's the Hoffman Show. We're on the Team 980. We're always live as well on the free Odyssey app. For the full interview with Charles Allen, check Grant and Danny's podcast sometime this weekend. Just search Grant and Danny wherever you get your podcasts. When we get back here on the Hoffman Show, it's our weekend preview, which is brought to you by nobody. Hoffman Show. We're on Team 980. We're always live as well on YouTube, too, at the Team 980, which I regret at the moment because I just... Sometimes during commercial breaks, Metal Chris again in for Anthony today. I kind of slumped down in my chair, and normally I try to get back in like an appropriate on-air position. Oh, look at me. I'm a professional radio host before I hit go on the stream, take us out of commercial. And I was mid getting out of my chair, coming out of break there. And it's really a terrible job by me. It's really the summary of that story. Just looking like a lazy bum.
But we work so hard.
We do. You get it. You get it. And especially look, it's Friday at 6:30. Most people listening, I'd hope, are done working. I guess we probably have some people that listen while they work, and you have a different schedule. And or I hope that you're not being kept at the office late on a Friday, and you're listening at your cubicle or whatever else that'd be that you're in that situation. I wish the best for you, but it is, even though this is my job, 4 to 7, it's still 6:30 on a Friday, and there's that. I mean, then again, I have no place to complain because Chris, you did the Russell show today, and then you doubled up and did my show. So first of all, thank you. Second of all, how are you holding up, bro?
I'm doing good, man. It's nice that it's a Friday. These kind of doubles are worse when it's like a Monday, and you're like, I got a whole week full of work. So.
That's fair. That's fair. Okay. Well, I'm glad you're doing well. Hopefully, I haven't made your job too difficult today. And now is the time that Anthony and I preview what's coming up this weekend. It's except for Anthony's in France, so I'll take this one. Chris, you just keep hitting the right buttons. You're doing a great job. And it's our weekend preview. And the ongoing joke is that it just like EJ's Nito stat of the night, most of the time on the NBA on TNT, it's brought to you by nobody. But if someone wants to step up and sponsor it, they're more than welcome. All right, let's start off in the WNBA. That's the busiest league this weekend. The Nationals will be in Los Angeles. We just talked about them and what's trending. Again, our best to Ron Washington in his recovery. But it's a big, fun weekend of WNBA basketball. A couple weeks until the All-Star break. Tonight, you got all kinds of fun. Tons of teams playing. The Mystics not amongst them, but you got Lynx Dream tonight. The Dream are kind of a surprise team at the W. They're 10-5 on the year. Brittany Griner in her first year in Atlanta. Ali Chagre is playing great. They lost their season opener to the Mystics and have really just been awesome. The was supposed to be marquee game of the night was Fever and Wings, marquee in the biggest sense, arguably two of the 5 biggest stars in the sport. Paige Becker's the #1 pick in this past draft, taking on Caitlin Clark in the Fever. But Clark is out for this game. So they're actually playing it at American Airlines Center, the Mavericks Arena down there in Dallas, but Clark is out. It's still a matchup of 2 of the last 3 #1 overall picks. It would have been 3 of the last 3 because Aaliyah Boston is on that Indiana Fever team, and she is facing off against Beckers. Last time they were on a court together was the 2022 national title game won by Boston's University of South Carolina. Chicago Sky and Angel Reese are at Chase Center tonight, take on the very surprising good Golden State Valkyries. New York Liberty have dropped a couple here as of late, taking on a Phoenix Mercury team that is also kind of the other surprise of the league. They're 11-4, Liberty and 11-3. And then Sun and Storm tonight. Connecticut, not very good. Seattle's had a very, very good season. They're favored by almost 20 tonight at Seattle. Tomorrow, Mystics get back at it. One and only game on the schedule. They face Dallas back at the College Park Center in outside of Dallas in Arlington. So get the Wings on a back-to-back and a chance to pull themselves above 500. So that's exciting. Sunday, Liberty and Dream, Sky Sparks, Aces Mercury, Sun and Lynx, Storm Valkyrie. Mystics then on when is that next game? They have all week off? I don't know. Now I'm all over the place on the schedule, and this is just fantastic radio. They got a 3-game road trip. They were in Vegas last night. They got the win.
Tomorrow at Wings.
Yeah, at Dallas. And then Thursday, there it is, at Minnesota, who they beat without Nafisa Collier earlier in the week before coming home. And they'll play their back-to-back games at Eagle Bank Arena against Chicago and Las Vegas. Okay. That is the W schedule for the weekend. A couple of big soccer games this weekend as well. Women's international window is open. U.S. had a big 4-0 win last night. Rose Lavelle's returned to the pitch for the U.S. women's national team for the first time since the Olympics. She's had a ton of injury issues, but worked her way back on the field. She had a couple of goals and an assist. Just an awesome night back. Alyssa Thompson with a goal. Sam Coffey with a goal. So phenomenal night for the U.S. They'll play Ireland again, and then they are in D.C. next week. July 2nd, they take on Canada. They're calling it the Continental Classico, so very much looking forward to that in DC next week. Then I believe the men are playing this weekend as well. Yes, indeed. The Gold Cup continuing, quarterfinals, USA, Costa Rica. The U.S., we actually did a segment a couple weeks ago on a Friday on how much trouble U.S. men's soccer was in, and then they've actually shown themselves pretty well in the Gold Cup with a very, very unstar-laden roster. Some of their best players, Europeans, that are taking the summer off or hurt or recovering from injury or whatever it may be. And the U.S. Has been able to, kind of put together some performances here, at very least get some results. I think there's kind of a mix of both. Some of the performances have been lackluster with a result, but they've also had a couple of very nice performances. But they take on Costa Rica, now out of the group stage into the quarterfinals of the Gold Cup. And that game is Sunday at 7 o'clock on Fox. Other than that, this weekend, NBA and NHL free agencies around the corner. NHL draft is tonight. The Islanders have the first pick. Summer League will be starting before you know it. Some of the stuff in Salt Lake, and then ultimately Vegas doesn't start till July 10th. So keep your eyes out for that. But that is we're kind of in that time of the calendar where there's only so much going on. Yet there's still a lot of storylines. So we'll have plenty to talk about next week. All right, that's our weekend preview brought to you by nobody. When we get back, real things, real people said in real microphones as we wrap up the weekend on The Hoffman Show. All right, it's the Hoffman Show wrapping up here on the Team 980, always live as well on the free Odyssey app. Coming up next week on the show, something I want to cover a little bit more and get into some more depth on is the Ace Bailey situation in Utah. The 5th overall pick in the draft had apparently told multiple teams in the top 5, all the teams in the top 5, like, don't draft me. So it seemed like he wanted to come to Washington or one of the teams that followed. So New Orleans at 7, or especially there was some rumors, and like everyone was saying, oh, his floor is 8. He'll never get past 8. So clearly Brooklyn was a destination that if he got to there, they were going to take him, and that was pretty well known in league circles. And the reaction from Paul George and Draymond Green and longtime veterans in the league is like, kid, get to the league and shut up and do your work, and like, this is stupid, right? There's a lot of people around the league that are like, this is a joke. Like, who's this kid? Basically, it's a lot of, who does this kid think he is? And I think it's worth saying that, like, yeah, there's a lot. And as I've gotten older, like, trust me, I get it. Like, I am now almost double Ace Bailey's age. That's wild. That is wild. At the age of 35. But, like, I've certainly been like, wow, these kids, right? About any number of things. They don't get how the world works. But they're still people, and they're still human beings, and they are being recruited to play basketball at the absolute highest level in the world. And there should be some level of respect for their skill set in that way. And we just accept in American sports that drafts are a part of it because that's how it's always been. That the draft is and we even celebrate it. And like this is not, by the way, to take away from the coolness of a dream being realized and the think of all the guys who cried. Like, think of the reaction that Edgecombe had, that Maluak had, that all of Maluak had, that all these guys had, that was like, oh my God, my dream of making the NBA is realized. But to pretend like everyone has to react the same, and that we shouldn't have some critical thought about what it means for our most talented young people in sports to have a choice on where they actually want to go and work. Like, if you were the most talented person in your field entering it, coming out of college or coming out of high school, either way, like, you'd probably get to pick where you work in your field. And sure, you're always limited to who's going to offer you. It's got to go both ways. And there are team building aspects of this. And to me, I've always been like, it's actually not that hard. Like, there should be a rookie, salary cap basically. And, if you are an amount of money allotted to each team for the draft, and depending on where you finish, you get more money. And so this year, like, forget the lottery. This year, the Wizards would have had the second most amount of money to spend on rookies. And, if you're the number one guy, you're the team with the most money, you offer the guy that you think is the best player a contract, and he can either choose, I'm going to take the most money from you, or if he's like, I don't really want to mess with you, for maybe he thinks your franchise is incompetent, maybe he thinks that your franchise is in a location that he doesn't want to be in. Like, you can stagger the money enough that, like, most people are going to take the money. But if a kid really wants to go in a different direction, like, fine. But I think we take that for granted, and people look at Ace Bailey like, oh, you spoiled brat. And it's like, nah, he's an 18-year-old kid that has an opinion. And that's not even to get into the stuff that I thought Zach Harper put very well, where he's like, I don't even put this on Ace. This is about Omar Cooper, his quasi-agent, his representative, who is probably steering him in the wrong direction. And even if he wanted to do some of the stuff he was doing quietly, the fact that they're doing it out loud and some of the ways that they're positioning themselves are probably not helpful to make Ace Bailey the most likable kid. But by the same token, some of this is on Ace. And I know Zach kind of pushed back on that. He's like, I don't put any of this on Ace. He is ultimately like, 18 is not 6. And you look at Trey Johnson, you look at VJ Edgecombe, like, you look at these kids who just have it mentally and have it more together. And you can't say it's possible and a positive for these kids and then say, well, it doesn't matter at all for the kids that don't have it. Like, there's requires a level of cognitive dissonance as well. And so somewhere is a middle ground. And again, it doesn't have to be a defining characteristic. It doesn't mean that Ace Bailey's definitely going to fail or Trey Johnson is definitely going to succeed. But when I think of the mentality that each of them are coming into the league with, it does feel like Johnson's mentality sets him up to be better than Bailey. But we know there's a lot more to it than that. And maybe we actually don't understand Bailey's mentality, or it's been misrepresented by the things he's being told to say by an adult that it seems that he probably shouldn't have trusted. Okay. That's my serious take at the end of the show. We'll talk about it more next week. Now, it's time for silliness to end the show in the form of real things real people said into real microphones.
Real things. We're not going to be sucked this year. Real people.
5 and 11, not very good.
Said into real microphones.
You know, the culture is actually damn good.
Let's start with a conversation, actually, between Trey Johnson and last year's number 14 overall pick, Bub Carrington, captured by the behind-the-scenes cameras at the NBA draft by the NBA and the Washington Wizards.
What's up with you? How you doing?
Hey, I'm good. How you feeling?
I'm feeling amazing. I feel like $1 million right now.
You about to get it, too. But nah, super excited to see you. We've been talking about you for the last month and a half, man. So just enjoy the night. We're going to see you soon.
Yes, sir. Most definitely.
Bring that energy to Washington. We need it.
I most definitely will do that for sure.
Roll us down.
Yes, sir.
There you go. I love that apparently Bub, I'm excited to see if Will Dawkins is asked about this tomorrow. I might go ask him myself. Hey, how much do you talk about future prospects with your current players? Because the fact that Bub was like, hey, we've been talking about you for months. I wonder, like, when he says we, is that him and his teammates just from watching Texas play? Or is that he in the front office, he and the coaching staff? But clearly there was an impression made somewhere in Washington by Trey Johnson, and now he's going to get to work with Bub starting in Summer League, because I do think Bub and all the guys that got drafted last year are going to be a part of the Summer League. Last but not least, here on a Friday, happy birthday to Bobby Wagner from your good pal, Jaden Daniels.
I want to say a very, very happy 55th birthday to the Hall of Famer, future gold jacket, my brother, Bobby Ninja Turtle Wagner. Appreciate you, bro, from day one. He's always a real one. Took care of me, took care of the rookies, took care of your teammates. Tremendous leader, tremendous dad. Love getting to know you and your family, man. Wish you nothing but another year. Hopefully you can see that 56.
Kids, man. Kids. Bobby Wagner, 35 years old today. And, like, I'm at the age now where there's just only a select amount of guys that are still playing sports at my age. It happened quick. It's like, dang. Oh, it's 32. Like, Terry, how can they pay him? He's 30. He's basically dead. And I'm like, man, I covered that guy as a rookie, and I'm way older than that. What? I know it's different careers, but man, the way we talk about athletes, it falls off a cliff quickly. Bobby Wagner still playing at a really high level, 35 years old today. Happy birthday, Bobby. Sorry, Jaden made fun of you like that, and we shared it on the radio for everyone's entertainment. That sound courtesy of the Commander social media page. All right, that's our show for today. Thanks so much for listening. Have a great weekend. Shout out to Metal Chris for doing a great job filling in for Anthony, and I'll see you on Monday.